So, music reviews. Yeah, these were a thing I used to do. It's been a. It's actually been a while since I even really did a music review. Now, this isn't going to be a music review, but just a simple retrospective. So, welcome to the second episode of Late Night with the Moth Queen. In these videos, I will essentially discuss my YouTube journey, my opinions on my videos, my thoughts on, random games, just kind of stuff like this. And so the idea of this one got brought up a bit ago, actually. Originally, this was even supposed to be a video. I never really thought about this until today, because the second Late Night with Moth Queen was actually supposed to be about the topic of scalpers and, resellers in the gaming industry. But of course, I was watching some music content and it reminded me that I actually used to do this. Now, most of these videos aren't even up on my channel anymore. I deleted quite a lot of them throughout the last few years and privated the others. There's only a few that are actually public at this point, and I'll, I mean, the ones I like will stay up. So why the sudden change? I'll get into that later on in the video, but I want to state what I reviewed first and why I reviewed it. What led me to even reviewing music? Why not just cover games first? That's an interesting question, and I don't even know the answer to this one. I think I only started reviewing music because I was listening to a lot of it at the time. In 2019, I started my YouTube account, and that allowed me to save songs up on YouTube. And so I was finding a lot of music at that point, and it just, I guess, one thing led to another, and here we were 5 years later, I'm talking about what I used to do. So, of course, the year is 2020. The world is, the world is doing fine for like another few months, but then it just suddenly basically ends. And of course, so I'm listening to some stuff, and one day I just decided, why not, review an album? This album was, of course, an album by the name of Danzig. This was, of course, released in 1988. It was a blues metal album, and it's still one I like. I don't really like the artist himself, but it's an album I do like for the most part. It had some good songs on it, and it was the subject of my first review. And it went pretty good. And I would eventually review other albums that came after that. Like that February, I reviewed his second album, Lucifuge, and that March, I began uh, reviewing. I began to review Disturbed's first album, The Sickness. Although I was actually nervous about that one because I was reviewing this one right as like COVID was declared when it was declared to be a huge issue, and so I was kind of scared that I was gonna get like in trouble with YouTube for reviewing an album called The Sickness. Yeah, I've also covered Evanescence's first album, and by that May, I already covered the Misfits, well, their first album, the first four Danzig albums, and um the first Disturbed album and Evanescence, with plans to cover more albums. And oh, in retrospect, this was fun content to make. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, it was pretty entertaining. But I think in retrospect, it wouldn't have really gone just the entire. It wouldn't have just gone all the way that it should have been. And so I guess, what other artists did I review and why did I review them? Well, other artists I reviewed were, of course, well, as I stated before, Korn. Korn was a huge band in my childhood and teenage years, and I wanted to review them. This is, of course, back in May of 2020. I reviewed their first album, and I remember having fun reviewing that album. I also would later cover Lady Gaga's first album that June, and eventually I actually deleted a few of my older Danzig reviews because Danzig content has seemed notorious for being taken off of YouTube, and I didn't want to get in trouble with YouTube. It was also at that point I was really starting to establish what I would review. Like, if it was from a band I honestly did not like due to, like, something they did, I wouldn't really review them. And it was the kind of same thing with, like, other stuff, too. And, well, I guess looking back, it definitely did kind of make reviewing some stuff more interesting. And I don't know. I don't think my next music review, aside from Danzig stuff, was really until that September. Because I remember I covered Evanescence's second album, and I think I did Disturbed's. I think I did Disturbed's second album that October or November. It was one of those days. Well, one of those months. I actually kind of got it, actually. Then, of course, we got Evanescence. Then I covered them because, no, I liked Evanescence. They were a pretty cool band, and, just felt that it was something I should have reviewed. Disturbed. At the time, I liked them. I had fun listening to the music. I thought they, I just thought that they were a cool band. As I got older, I definitely realized I'm like, yeah, these guys definitely did have a lot to say about society at the time. Because again, like, they were they were a band that kind of did provide a lot of social commentary about stuff such as wars and technology and corruption. And I mean, before Immortalized, they were definitely an interesting band. And then there are other groups I reviewed, like I reviewed The Misfits and Sourm. I reviewed Robin's albums and Lady Gaga's albums. I reviewed Feathers. I reviewed Gorgeous Frankenstein. I even reviewed a few movie soundtracks. I mean, honestly, I think for the 3 years I reviewed music, I think I did touch upon some really interesting stuff. But then there's the issues when it comes to reviewing such a huge medium, and that's that where do you start? I mean, at least with games, it does seem easy to really start. Just pick up a game and review it. With an album, it just kind of felt like there was a lot to really get into at first. Like, do I review a certain discography of an artist, or do I review everything they've ever made? And also, how do I review the album? Do I go track by track and give my thoughts on each track? what if they're boring? What if I can't really think of much to say? Do I just do something generic and just say this track was pretty good and just leave it at that? Or do I just pick a few songs off of an album and be like, yeah, this song was actually pretty good. I like this one. I don't know. How I viewed music did kind of change within the first few years, and yeah, I'd say it was the same thing about how you viewed any media. You don't really start off reviewing media in like the best sense possible. You grow and learn. That's kind of what I learned. And of course, I guess what were some artists I did want to review, but never did? I'd say Drowning Pool. Drowning Pool actually was a band I wanted to review for quite a bit at that point. I actually had listened to the most recent album, that of course being Strike a Nerve. This came out like back in 2022, and just honestly a really good album. I was hesitant at first simply due to the fact that, well, I mean, the lead vocalist, they went through a lot of vocalists, and so I wasn't really sure if I could really review a band like that. Generally, because I'm like, I don't really know how to approach the topic of them changing so many lead vocalists and such. Also, the first vocalist, Dave Williams, did pass away. I'm like, I don't know how I really approach that. Or it's the same with like older bands. Like, there'd be bands like, I remember I wanted to review. I wanted to review Kiss's albums at one point, and the thing about Kiss is that they have like a lot of albums. I'm like, I don't know how I'd start on that. Like, that kind of be a lot. Like Danzig, he had a lot of albums too, and that's why it took so long to really review all this stuff. So yeah, that was definitely an issue when it came to reviewing content. Is how would I review it and what I would do. I know other bands I did want to review were definitely Five Finger Death Punch. I actually want to review them uh, for a few years at that point. I never really did that because when I got around to listening to the albums, I kind of was dying of boredom, and I didn't want to have the review be overly negative. Then there were other soundtracks I wanted to review. Like I wanted to review the single soundtrack, Scream, and there's another soundtrack I was just thinking of, but never really got to that point. Then you know, there were other smaller artists I did want to review too, and overall, I think what really did the music reviews in was just kind of not much attention being given to them on my end. These reviews generally did extremely well on YouTube, and I remember getting a lot of positive comments when I did these. But I think for me, I just don't think I could have given them the proper attention for them to thrive. And I think as I was doing more gaming content, I think I was enjoying that more than the music content, and so I just kind of felt like I had to choose which one I wanted to do, and did end up choosing to do gaming content, and overall I feel like that did do a lot better. So I guess another question could be, what were my influences for reviewing music? Was there any cool person I was up to that did music reviews, or was this just some random thing I just decided to do? There's a YouTuber I did watch quite a bit of. His name is Mountain Top 9, and I actually found him. Uh, I found him like I think back in like 2017. He reviewed a lot of Danzig albums, and I kind of want to do what he did. Yeah, he was just some random cool dude. Talked about music, that seemed pretty cool. And so I wanted to do something like that. And I think that was my biggest influence. Was just him. And I don't think he's on YouTube anymore. I think he deleted his channel, which really does suck, to be honest. But there's also someone else that I was I was I don't know I don't know how to describe that, but there was someone that I didn't have a very strong connection with. It was kind of, I don't know, I guess sort of romantic. Not really sure how I'd call it that, because you were never really official. But I don't know. There's this one person. They uploaded a bunch of Nightcore stuff, and I think that was generally something I was able to kind of start really gaining influence from, because it's just like, oh, these actually seem pretty cool, and this is introducing me to a bunch of bands that I would kind of listen to. I'm like, yeah, I think I'd love to review these guys. But I think part of the big issue with music content is that there wasn't really much I could do with it at the time, in my opinion. I know I wanted to do like top 5 music videos and such, but honestly, the more I thought about that, I'm like, I don't know if that's something I want to do, because what I want to do with my channel is I want to do stuff that other people aren't doing. I don't want my channel to just simply become a content farm like so many like some bigger channels. So yeah. So I guess another question could be, what artists would I not review and which ones would review? Artists that I would not review, it's simple. I've haven't really talked about it that much, but um, artists like Mayhem and potentially Marilyn Manson, and in retrospect, the Misfits, all different reasons, or at least mostly different reasons. I guess let's start with Mayhem. This is probably arguably the most iconic example of a controversial artist, and that is, of course, the fact that Vlog Vikanes, he's, well, I'm just gonna say it, the dude's a neo-Nazi, and that's the reason why I never would review Mayhem. Sure, there's the argument of separating art from the artist and the fact that he isn't even with the band anymore, and I don't think he's had any official. I know he's been on official releases, but I don't think he's been on any studio albums. But with me, I'm like, I don't want to review this band because of him. Not to mention, aside from him, that is kind of a really messed up band, because one of the bandmates took the pic. He took a picture of one of his dead bandmates and supposedly, and I mean supposedly, uh, used parts of his skull as necklaces. And there's some artists that I will simply, like, I will be like, okay, I will still cover the music but criticize him as a person. But then there's some artists that I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to review the music because of how horrible they are as a person. And of course, I guess moving on to Marilyn Manson, I wanted to cover his albums when I was still reviewing music. It's just this wasn't able to be a thing because he was in the midst of a lawsuit at the time with one of his exes, who had alleged that he did some really unspeakable things towards her and was essentially abusive towards her. And this kind of put any plans to review his stuff on ice, because I'm like, generally I try to have my channel out of controversy, because frankly I kind of don't want to be a YouTuber that just constantly gets into controversy over stuff, because it's just like, where's the fun in that? That just sounds like a stupid way of making content. And frankly, honestly, the people who do always constantly get themselves into controversy like that really are kind of sad people to be around. Then, of course, so yeah, I know I did mention one of his songs once or twice with, I think, Underworld soundtrack review. It's just anything with his name on it was something I was kind of hesitant to review. Even a Queen of the Dam soundtrack, I wanted to review since, like, I think 2020 or 2021 kind of got put on ice because he had a track on there. Then, of course, I guess in retrospect, the Misfits, uh, honestly, at the time I did not notice, but, well, obviously, there's kind of two reasons I don't want to review the Misfits at this point. Danzig and Michael Graves. Danzig is a very washed up artist and just frankly a really incompetent artist. I will admit I was too soft on a lot of his albums. And in retrospect, if Skeletons and um, Danzig Sings Elvis were reviewed today, I would not give them the score I did because those albums are generally terrible. I will admit, I was not perfect when I reviewed some albums. Some albums I reviewed, honestly, they didn't really deserve the high ranking I gave them, or some that I look back, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of forgettable. But going back to artists I went review, we of course have Danzig. Danzig has used uh, Nazi symbols in plenty of his artwork or albums. One is debatable, and that's of course the Iron Cross, because, well, if you study history, you kind of know that this has been used before the Third Reich, but this one seems more commonly associated with that, and this actually made me plan to get rid of my Danzig collection at one point, because I'm like, I don't think I want to own anything by this guy if he's putting stuff like this in there. I got talked out of it. Then I get a lyric booklet, and I'm like, okay, he has a picture of a certain dictator drawn by someone. I'm like, yeah, I'm not listening to this guy's stuff again. And it just came out like a few months ago that he used the old racist symbol, the black sun, on some merch. I'm like, yeah, this guy clearly is doing this for shock value, or is just really a terrible person. I guess anyone could pick and choose which one they want. But of course, then you have Michael Graves. So the Misfits I reviewed back in 2022. In retrospect, I kind of regret doing that review simply because, well, I mean, honestly, most of the Misfits albums are generally a bit boring. The only one I actually really actively liked was, of course, Static Age and Devil's Reign. Joey Only is a very underrated vocalist, might I add. But the Danzig era, he was kind of good. His voice sounded nice. Michael Graves just kind of sounded like he wanted to be in a punk band, but didn't really know what punk actually was. And it turns out that Michael Graves was conspiring with the capital tax from back in 2021. And I didn't know that at the time, but looking back, yeah, I would have never reviewed the Misfits albums because of what Michael Graves wanted to do, simply because I normally don't get into political stuff on this channel, because frankly I really could care less about this stuff. But it's just kind of disgusting how some people act, and hence why I would not review certain artists. And it's the same thing with Stain. I wanted to actually review Stain's stuff at one point, but their lead vocalist, and Lewis, generally just kind of runs his mouth on a lot, and it just kind of got annoying very quickly. And it's the same stuff with like other bands that I straight up just have no respect for. like Static X. I've listened to everything up to Cult of Static. Project Regeneration Part 1 and Part 2 I've not listened to, simply because it's really messed up that they have Estel Dope dressed up as a Wayne Static cosplay. That's kind of morbid and generally makes me despise that band. And there's been other artists, like if they were tied to someone, like I think I had to watch my words carefully when I reviewed Art Pop by Lady Gaga, because R. Kelly had a song on that one, and R. Kelly is generally a horrible person, and it's kind of gross that he ever worked with someone like her. And honestly, I don't know, there's other bands I wouldn't review, like either they might have had a way too long discography, they're horrible people, or they're just too controversial to review. Like Marilyn Manson was one of them, simply due to the fact that, I mean, one of his songs literally is as pretty as a insert old racist symbol. Yeah, you could complain that, oh, Marilyn Manson is a shock rocker. There's a difference between being a shock rocker and just saying the stupidest stuff for attention. That's all I'm just gonna say. But of course, I guess, what are my thoughts on music reviews, and would I do them again? My thoughts on them: I like them. They were okay. They were fun to do. They got views. They got me quite a few subscribers when I was still doing them, and for that, I'm actually generally thankful for, simply due to the fact that, well, I generally would have not had I generally would have not had as much viewership as I do now if I did not do the music reviews. I would have had less, more likely, and I'm very much thankful that I was able to get that audience. Even though they kind of ended the way they did, believe me, I did want to try to continue them, but I don't know. It just felt like something in me. It's just like, yeah, it's just, they ran their course. Time to hang it up. Yeah, they were fun while they lasted. I did have fun reviewing some of the artists I did do. In retrospect, there would be some artists that I would not really cover after a certain point, because either they might have been too controversial, or they just generally never stop running their mouth on stuff. And of course, I guess, yeah, it'd be some artists that I would never review. But then there's artists that I generally did want to review, but never really got the chance to do so, which is unfortunate because, well, if I continued doing music reviews, I generally would have been able to find a lot of stuff to review. I actually thought about wanting to bring it back in 2023 and 2024 when I did the Danzig retrospective, and I remember I wanted to do a random music review back when Mstal, uh, doing albums I've listened to, because if you follow me on Blue Sky, uh, you'll know that I was listening to some new albums. I don't know if I've ever posted those on Twitter, but I know I posted them on my Discord, so, I mean, chances are if you're my server, or if you follow me on Blue Sky, chances are you have seen me post a new album I listened to. So those I actually generally want to review up on YouTube. That didn't really happen though, and, well, it never did happen. I'm glad that I did get this opportunity to review stuff, and I'm kind of glad that I got to reflect on some of my early reviews and see how they shaped how this channel turned out, and it was fun. I don't regret ever reviewing music. It was a fun, it was a pretty fun thing to have done. But that's all I really have to say for today. obviously, I do want to continue with these. Yeah, I'll just have to think about more topics to bring up. Yeah, because I generally want these to, be about like maybe 10, 20 minutes. Just kind of, really just kind of be, enough to really make a full video. And not be like, oh, it's just gonna be like a 1 minute video about how this game just did this. It's just, no, I don't want to do content like that. I don't mind short form content, but I just want to do something that matters. So, of course, till then, thank you all for watching and have a wonderful night.